What if I told you that the most detailed peace plan for Gaza in years might finally be on the table? But it's hanging by a thread. This plan isn't just a headline or a vague promise. It's a carefully divided, three-phase roadmap that could determine whether Gaza sees peace or slips back into another devastating cycle of violence. So let's break this down, phase by phase, and talk about how this plan actually works, what it means for both sides, and why the story of Gaza is still far from over. Phase 1. The first breath of calm. The first phase, outlined in yellow on the map, begins with something Gaza hasn't seen in a long time: silence. A hard-won ceasefire finally brings an end to the constant sounds of explosions and artillery fire. Israeli forces start to pull back from several densely populated areas, reducing their control to about half of Gaza. It's a cautious retreat, not total, but enough to signal a first step toward trust. And this is where things get real. Hostage exchanges begin. Gaza militants start by releasing a small group of Israeli hostages, and in return, Israel agrees to free around 1,900 Palestinian prisoners. But in the very early days, only about 20 prisoners are expected to walk free. A symbolic gesture meant to show good faith. At the same time, humanitarian aid finally starts pouring in. Imagine 400 trucks entering Gaza every single day, carrying flour, medicine, clean water, and fuel. Bakeries reopen, hospitals come back to life, and families that had been displaced for months start returning home. For the first time in a long time, aid convoys can actually move without being bombed or blocked. The airstrikes pause, and international organizations, from the Red Cross to the UN, can distribute food and medicine far more freely than before. It's not peace yet, but it's the first sign that peace might actually be possible. Phase 2. Building trust and a temporary government. As trust slowly begins to build, Phase 2 kicks in. In this stage, Israeli forces pull back even further, now controlling only around 40% of Gaza. The militants respond by releasing the remaining 28 Israeli hostages who are still alive. In exchange, Israel lets go of another 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, many of whom were detained after the October 7th attacks. But this phase isn't just about trading people. It's about trading control. The political system in Gaza starts to shift. The administration temporarily passes into the hands of a group of technocrats. Basically, specialists and non-partisan figures backed by the international community. Their job? To run Gaza fairly, rebuild critical infrastructure, and set up the groundwork for stable civilian governance. And during this time, the focus moves to the basics: power, water, and safety. Engineers start restoring the power grid. Workers rebuild the water pipelines. Streets are cleared of debris, and communication lines are slowly restored. If Phase 1 was about survival, Phase 2 is about stability. Phase 3. The fragile hope of freedom. Now, the final and most delicate stage, Phase 3, shown as the small white line on the map. In this stage, Israel's military presence shrinks to its lowest level yet. Most Israeli troops exit Gaza, leaving control of about 15% of territory along the border. This zone acts as a buffer, Israel's way of maintaining security, oversight, without full-scale occupation. At the same time, the bodies of deceased hostages and prisoners are repatriated, allowing families on both sides some closure. The blockades that have choked Gaza for years begin to lift. Goods, aid, and supplies start flowing freely across the borders. This is the moment the plan aims for. A Gaza on the road to stable, civilian-led governance. A Gaza that can rebuild itself without the constant fear of war. But here's the catch. Even in this final phase, Israel still holds control over some key areas. That means Gaza's freedom will still exist under partial Israeli authority. It's not total independence. It's more like cautious coexistence. Still, for millions of people exhausted by years of violence, displacement, and loss, even this small window of peace would mean the world. The risk. What if it fails? Of course, the biggest question is, what happens if this plan collapses? Because let's be honest, we've seen peace plans before. Many started with hope and ended in rubble. If the trust breaks, if a single ceasefire violation spirals out of control, Israel is fully prepared to use force to retake Gaza. And when that happens, the cycle of violence, rockets, airstrikes, and endless suffering could begin all over again. To understand why this keeps happening, we have to go a bit deeper into how Hamas changed its entire military strategy and why Israel hasn't been able to completely eliminate the group, despite years of conflict. The underground war, tunnels and repurposed weapons. Even with 85% of the tunnels destroyed in major areas like Rafah and Khan Yunis, Hamas still maintains hundreds of miles of underground routes. These tunnels are their lifeline, connecting weapons caches, command posts, and smuggling routes. They allow fighters to move undetected beneath the surface while Israeli troops patrol above ground. And despite massive destruction of their weapon factories, Hamas has found ways to rebuild. Using scrap metal, damaged rocket parts, and unexploded Israeli munitions, they're producing homemade rockets, anti-tank missiles, and improvised explosive devices, or IEDs. It's a dark form of recycling, turning the weapons meant to destroy them into new tools of war. Even under Israeli surveillance, they still manage to fire short-range rockets from within Gaza, keeping the region tense and unpredictable. This isn't just warfare, it's psychological. Every unexpected explosion, every sudden attack reminds people that the conflict is far from over. How we got here. The October 7th attack. To really understand the current situation, let's rewind to what reignited this war. October 7th, 2023. On that day, Hamas, backed by Iran, launched one of the most shocking and coordinated attacks in modern Middle Eastern history. It started just after sunrise. Around 6:30 a.m., roughly 3,000 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel. Some were the homemade Qassam rockets. Others were Iranian-made Fajr models, much stronger and deadlier. The Iron Dome defense system kicked in, intercepting about 60% of them, but the sheer volume overwhelmed it. Then came the second wave. Fighters using motorized paragliders and powered hang gliders crossed the border from above, bypassing Israel's air defenses completely. Once they landed, they secured the area, paving the way for ground forces. By 7:30 a.m., more groups had breached the border. They attacked key crossings like Kerem Shalom and Erez, two of the most critical gateways between Gaza and Israel. Explosives were used to destroy barriers, while bulldozers widened the gaps to let more fighters through. Pickup trucks and motorbikes poured in behind them. In the chaos, Hamas commandos stormed Israeli bases, jamming communications and cutting off soldiers from their commanders. And by the time Israel realized the full scale of the attack, dozens of Israeli civilians and soldiers had been taken hostage and dragged back into Gaza. The plan was deliberate: cause chaos, overwhelm the military, take hostages for leverage. And it worked, at least initially. Israel responded immediately with airstrikes. Entire neighborhoods in Gaza were flattened within days. Thousands of Palestinians, civilians and militants, were killed or injured. From there, the war spiraled. The Israeli strategy: divide and control. Now, fast forward. To understand Israel's military focus, let's look at Gaza's geography. The region is divided into 5 main parts: North Gaza, Gaza City, Deir al-Balah, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. Since the October 7th attack, the Israeli Defense Forces have invaded Gaza from nearly all directions, by land, sea, and air. They first entered from the north, pushing deeper toward the central region, while ordering civilians to move south for safety. But here's the irony. Months later, those same civilians are now being told to move north again toward newly created humanitarian zones. Currently, Israel controls key crossings like Kerem Shalom, while Hamas maintains its hold on Rafah, a crucial passage leading to Egypt. This crossing is one of the last remaining lifelines for Gaza and one of Israel's main targets. Because as long as Rafah stays under Hamas control, rockets can still be smuggled, and attacks can still be launched. So where does this leave Gaza? At this point, Gaza stands at a crossroads. The peace plan offers a fragile hope, a chance to rebuild, reopen, and recover. But it also depends entirely on trust between two sides that haven't trusted each other for decades. Phase 1 gives breathing room. Phase 2 builds a foundation. Phase 3 tries to hand over the keys to a peaceful future. But if even one part fails, it could all collapse. And that's the tragic cycle of this conflict. Every time progress is made, mistrust drags it back down. The Gaza peace plan might not solve everything. It won't erase years of anger, grief, and loss. But it could be the first real blueprint for something different. Something that ends with people finally living, not just surviving. And for the millions trapped in the middle of this endless struggle, that's a dream worth holding on to. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, press the subscribe button, and also drop your thoughts in the comment section.